Well, to begin with, it's a very different way of looking at psychological things, except it's not just psychology. And the problem with what we actually, well, I shouldn't say we because it was Antonovsky, but okay, I was involved. Marie Wissing at Potchefstroom is also very prominent in this field. And of course, there are lots of other people, but all of us, in Scandinavian countries, there's a strong, particularly now in Sweden and in Finland, there's a strong move in this direction. It was a new field that was developing. And we were into it before positive psychology started in 2000. Antonovsky published in 1979 and 87. Marie Wissing and a colleague of hers talked about taking off from my photogenesis. They talk about photology, psychophotology. Now, photology and salutogenesis, photogenesis is present in all disciplines, sociology, social work, and all kinds of things, even economics. But specifically in psychology, this was a completely different emphasis. And that is why positive psychology took off so well. Simply because traditionally we were interested in pathology, psychopathology, what makes people sick, why are people like this and that, and why do they make such a mess of bringing up their children? But in the meantime, what's the other side of it? What helps people to be strong? And when you start looking at the world through that kind of spectacles, it is fantastically interesting. I used to say to students, we know that there's about 10% of the normal of a population are people who are at the bottom end of the distribution. They mentally ill or mentally retarded, etc., but they're sick people. But from there up along a very long curve, people are in various degrees normal and gradually become better and better. It's over to the end. It's healthy people, strong people. And the opposite 10% at the other end are really superb people. They are brilliant. They are capable to do things that are unbelievable. They are the cream of humanity. But we know so little about this 90% of the curve. The other 10% at the right-hand end, we know fairly much about. But all of these other people who are functioning all over this normal curve, we ignore them. We're just hammering this little bit at the bottom. So it's a different way of looking at it. And Maslow already started pointing in that direction. He was another person that really influenced me. For a while there, I was quite strongly humanistic and couldn't see anything wrong with the human race until I realized that this is going too far. And then I read in a book that was published after his death that Maslow himself said, after Hitler and Stalin, you can't be a humanist. It is an orientation towards psychology that took off like a fire. It was a house on fire and the house almost burned down as a result of it. But at the same time, it does not mean that positive psychology or psychophotology will ignore the rest. If you read Antonovsky, he makes it very, very clear that the negative things are really overwhelmingly present. There's so much sadness, so much illness, so much deprivation, all things negative are constantly present in human existence. But the point that he is making, and that this whole approach is making, is that people don't just sit there and gradually die. They get out of it. They develop further. They go on. They overcome things. There was a time when, particularly for instance when I was a boy and later on, where cancer was a death sentence, and we accepted cancer as a death sentence. But then if you look at it nowadays in particular, people survive cancer all the time. And my own wife, Rita, had breast cancer, which got into her hip eventually, and she had a metastasis in her back eventually, in her spine. And this was 1993. She was on her way to the graveyard, but she's still around. Okay, there's a long, long story behind that bit. But the fact is that people do survive cancer. They do survive. I mean, I had a heart attack. I've had 2 bypasses. And from 1976 to now is a long time already. I've survived it, and I've been very active. And medicine is a marvelous discipline. I'm using the word marvelous too often, but that is how I look at the world. It's a marvelous place. And marvelous things happen all the time. And people survive as a result of that. Work experiences are terrible in many places, but there are also people who are joyful wherever they work. They seem to find a way to do it differently or to overcome. And that's that overcoming part that is so important, and that we tended to ignore for most of the existence of psychology, and in sociology and in social work. Social workers are preoccupied with people down there who are in trouble, who are unhappy, and people who do bad things to their children and to each other and so on. But they don't emphasize the getting out of it enough. On the other hand, I am very fond of talking about the strength perspective, using the expression of strength perspective. But I got that from a social work book, a book by a social work professor. So we're not in psychology alone with this. We certainly share it with several other disciplines, education too. As far as psychology is concerned, for me, it provided me with a long stretch of joyous work, really joyous work. Reading, writing, teaching, and getting other people interested. This is fun, man. This is fun.